major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Algeria has been elected Vice President of the African Committee of the International Federation of Reproduction Rights Organizations, IFRO. Senior officials from the United States and Iran have wrapped up their third round of talks covering issues including Tehran's nuclear program, but without reaching an agreement. But the foreign minister of mediator Oman says there was significant progress and a meeting will be held next week. Pakistan has carried out airstrikes on Afghanistan's capital Kabul and two other provinces, escalating tensions with the Afghanistan of a night of fierce clashes along their shared border. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm your host, Miriam Bershi. Algeria, represented by Mehdi Delmi, Deputy Director General of the National Copyright and Related Rights Office, has been elected Vice President of the African Committee of the International Federation of Reproduction Rights Organizations, IFRO. The National Copyright and Related Rights Office stressed that the election is a recognition of the leading role played by Algeria in defending copyright at the African and international levels. It added that it strengthens the office's contribution to the protection of creators and publishers and the promotion of international cooperation in the field of reproduction rights and intellectual property. IFRO, which brings together several collective management organizations for reproduction rights around the world, works to protect copyright and related rights, as well as to ensure fair remuneration for creators and publishers. The jury for the 8th edition of the Assia Jabbar Grand Prize for Fiction 2026 edition, organized by the National Company for Communication, Publishing and Advertising, ANEP, under the high patronage of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, was installed here in Algiers. The installation ceremony was presided over by the CEO of ANEP, Mr. Kamel Messoud, following an iftar held at the El Orsi Hotel, in the presence of the advisor to the President of the Republic in charge of the General Directorate of Communication, Mr. Kamel Sidi Said, and other officials. Headed by poet and translator Hakim Milud, the 10-member jury includes writers and academics such as Meissa Bey and Sharif Merabi. El-Gham described the prize created in 2015 as a major cultural event promoting Algerian novelists writing in Arabic, Amazigh and French. He noted that the previous edition was themed Resistant Pens, in tribute to Palestinian writers, while this year's theme will reflect current developments. For his part, the jury president, Hakim Milud, indicated that submission for the 8th edition of this prize, organized under the auspices of the Ministry of Communication, are open to publishing houses and that the submitted works will be received starting in early March, while the award ceremony is scheduled for July. Created in 2015, this prestigious literary prize, named after the Algerian writer and academic Assia Jabbar, aims to reward the best novel written in the two national languages, Arabic and Amazigh, as well as in French. It also pays tribute to the richness and diversity of Algerian literature, working to promote and enhance national literary creation, as well as to encourage creativity publishing and the book industry. The ambassador of the Sahrawi Republic here in Algiers, Khatriyat Douha, has reaffirmed the Sahrawi people's inalienable right to self-determination and independence, stressing that it remains the core of any just and lasting solution to the conflict. The details with Mohamed Khatel in this report.
Speaking at a conference organized by the National Institute for Global Strategic Studies on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the proclamation of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Khatriyat Douha said the declaration on February 27, 1976, crowned a historical and legal struggle following Spain's withdrawal from the Sahrawi territory.
في هذا الوقت الذي يجري فيه الحديث عن محاولة At this time, when talks are being held about trying to find a way to end or reach a final agreement on the decolonization of our country and trying to reach an agreement between us and the Moroccan occupier. On the occasion, the Sahrawi people have proven over the past 50 years, reaffirmed their attachment to their full right to independence and sovereignty through the establishment of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic as a founding member state of the African Union and also as a member of the international community and the international group, and they emphasize that there is no benefit in continuing to deny the just and legitimate Sahrawi people's right, not only to self-determination, but also to independence.
The Sahrawi ambassador recalled that Western Sahara has been on the UN list of non-self-governing territories since 1963 and cited the 1975 advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, which found no sovereignty ties between Morocco and Western Sahara and affirmed the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. He noted that the proclamation of the Sahrawi Republic provided a legal and political framework to organize the struggle and strengthen international presence, highlighting that it is a founding member of the African Union. Khatri Addouh reiterated the Sahrawi people's readiness to engage in a serious UN-led process to reach a just and final settlement guaranteeing self-determination, warning that denying this right would only prolong the conflict. For his part, INASC Director General Abdelaziz Mjahid said the Sahrawi cause has made political, legal and diplomatic gains over decades, emphasizing that the people's resilience reflects their firm commitment to achieving their legitimate rights.
Moving to the situation in the Middle East, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, has reaffirmed its rejection of recent Zionist measures aimed at deepening the annexation of the occupied West Bank in the final communique issued after an emergency open-ended meeting of its executive committee at the level of foreign ministers. The OIC strongly condemned what it described as hostile decisions and actions by the Israeli occupying power to expand control and entrench annexation policies in the West Bank, including in Quds al-Sharif. It said such measures are null and void and must be revoked, reiterating its opposition to any form of annexation. The OIC stressed the centrality of the question of Palestine and Quds al-Sharif to the Islamic world, underscoring the Palestinian and Arab identity of occupied East al-Quds. It called for a unified Islamic stance to protect Islamic and Christian holy sites and described the Palestinian cause as a just struggle for freedom and national rights. The organization also reaffirmed support for the right of return of Palestinian refugees in line with the United Nations Resolution 194, emphasizing the unity and territorial integrity of Palestinian land. It said the West Bank, including its al-Quds and the Gaza Strip, constitute a single, indivisible geographical and political unit for one people. Israeli occupation forces have killed at least 6 Palestinians in fresh attacks across the Gaza Strip. In the northern town of Beit Lahia, medical sources reported that 43-year-old Hussam Abu Khusa was fatally shot in the Al-Atra area. Earlier, Israeli strikes targeted central and southern parts of the Strip. Local sources reported that a combat drone hit a group of people near the Al-Maslak area west of Khan Yunis, killing 3. In a separate strike, 2 Palestinians were killed and several others wounded when the drone targeted a group north of the El Bureij refugee camp. The latest deaths came across, or despite a ceasefire agreement, came into effect on October 10th, 2025. Since then, at least 618 Palestinians have been killed and 1,663 injured, according to figures from Gaza. Israel has been carrying out a military offensive in Gaza since October 2023. Palestinian sources said that at least 72,082 people, most of them women and children, have been killed and 171,761 wounded. Senior officials from the United States and Iran have wrapped up their third round of talks covering issues including Tehran's nuclear program without reaching an agreement. But the foreign minister mediator Oman says there was significant progress and a meeting will be held next week. More details in this report with Mohammed Khatel.
The latest round of negotiations was held on Thursday in Geneva, as the high-level talks had resumed earlier this month for the first time in about 8 months. Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi said technical teams will be part of the meeting to be held next week in Austria. For his part, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said there had been good progress in talks with the United States in Geneva. Speaking at a press conference following the third round of nuclear negotiations between Tehran and Washington, sponsored by Oman, Araghchi said the two sides had reached understanding on some issues, while differences remain on others, adding that the talks were one of the most significant and longest negotiation sessions, which lasted about 4 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. Araghchi confirmed that technical-level talks will begin in Vienna next Monday and said the next round of negotiations is expected soon, possibly within a week. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned Iran's reluctance to discuss its development of intercontinental ballistic missiles was also a significant stumbling block. Rubio said that beyond the nuclear program, Iran's conventional weapons were solely designed to attack America and attack Americans, if they choose to do so, adding that these things had to be. It's worth noting that the renewed diplomatic efforts, which included earlier rounds in Muscat and Geneva this month, come amid heightened regional tensions and the U.S. military buildup in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati discussed in a phone call the latest round of indirect talks between Tehran and Washington held in Geneva. The two sides reviewed developments in the Iran-U.S. nuclear negotiations and broader regional issues. Araghchi briefed Abdelati on progress in the talks, specifically Thursday's third round, and underscored Tehran's commitment to diplomacy. Separately, Egypt's Foreign Ministry said on Friday Abdelati held phone talks. Separately, Egypt's Foreign Ministry said on Friday that Abdelati held phone talks with Araghchi and the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, during which reaffirmed Egypt's support for diplomatic efforts and stressed the need for compromise to avoid further military escalation.
Pakistan has carried out airstrikes on Afghanistan's capital Kabul and two other provinces, escalating tensions with Afghanistan after a night of fierce clashes along their shared border. Mohammed Khatil has the details.
The bombardment came just hours after Taliban authorities announced what they described as a large-scale offensive against Pakistani military positions near the border. The fighting marks one of the most serious flare-ups in months between the neighboring countries. Pakistani forces struck Kabul as well as the southern province of Kandahar in the eastern province of Paktika. Casualty figures remain unclear, with both sides issuing sharply different tolls that could not be independently verified. Islamabad says 228 Taliban fighters were killed, while 2 of its own security personnel died. Afghan officials, for their part, claim 55 Pakistani soldiers were killed and 8 Taliban fighters lost their lives. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Asif declared that the situation now amounts to open war between Pakistan and Afghanistan's Taliban government. Explosions were reported in Kabul as fighting continued along the border. Hours before the strikes, Taliban government spokesperson Habibullah Mujahid said Afghan forces were carrying out large-scale offensive operations against Pakistani troops along the Durand Line, the disputed border separating the two countries. Several senior Pakistani officials have praised the military action. Defense Minister Khawaja Asif reiterated that Pakistan would respond forcefully to what it considers cross-border aggression. The escalation has triggered swift international reaction. The United Nations, alongside China, Iran, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, have urged both sides to show restraint and return to dialogue. Iran has offered to mediate, while China has called for immediate talks. The foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia and Turkey have reportedly spoken by phone with their Pakistani counterpart, pressing for an end to hostilities. In London, British Home Secretary Yvette Cooper called for de-escalation following what she described as retaliatory strikes by Pakistan on several Afghan cities. Meanwhile, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said in Geneva during a global address on the state of human rights that he was extremely alarmed by the risk of wider regional escalation. The latest violence follows weeks of border clashes and mutual accusations. Both Islamabad and Kabul have claimed that dozens have been killed in recent exchanges along the border. With tensions now openly described as war by Pakistani officials, diplomatic pressure is mounting to prevent the conflict from spiraling further in an already volatile region.
And with this last piece of news, we come to the end of our news bulletin. Stay tuned for Radio Algeria International.